Morris with the NSA.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Why it could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. This is Miles Lewis and my co-host.
Hey, everybody. Mark Jackson.
And this is Anomaly Now, live from Austin, Texas. It is a weekly brief news roundup broadcast to you on behalf of the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives, a.k.a. Scientific Anomaly Institute. And we're happy to be back. Sorry for missing out on last week, but, stuff comes up, life happens, and, hey, we needed a break. Sometimes I still think I could use a break, but very happy to be here tonight. We've got a lot of news to cover, and we're on a little bit more of a schedule tonight because coming up after our 7 to 7:30 p.m. broadcast here on Anomaly Now via our YouTube channel and Facebook page, we're going to have at 7:45 part 2 of the twisted tale of Willie Seabrook and his flesh eating zombies. That's right, folks. Back in February, when we launched the monthly in-person meetup at our physical location downtown Austin, the Anomaly Archives was going to begin doing a monthly series called the Anomaly Archives Adventure Club, brought about by my good friends Anita XS and Victor Criterion. And at the end of that February event, that inaugural event, they were like, the next one's going to be about zombies. Well, a lot's going on between now and then, and they've been working hard on it. And this past Monday night, we aired part 1. You can watch that. It's about 22 minutes long. The actual feature total about 45 minutes. And again, that is the twisted tale of Willie Seabrook and his flesh-eating zombies. There's a difference there between flesh-eating zombies and flesh-eating zombies, but you'll find out about that. Also, not going to go into any details yet, but boy, I'm so excited to tell y'all that, yep, it's coming. It's finally coming. The Anomaly Archives Streamathon. It's going to be an emergency fundraiser to raise money so that we can continue to exist at our current location past the end of our lease that ends in January 2021. And we love the location that we're at. We want to stay there, and we'll have more details about that very soon. Again, that's the Anomaly Archives Streamathon 2020.
Man, Miles, I've seen that preliminary lineup, and I'll tell you, folks, stay tuned because this could be a really just a really great event, but also very impactful for the nonprofit. So stay tuned. Again, this is a good list.
Yep. It's got tons of speakers. We're going to have a kind of a Fortean film fest and a number of musicians throwing down with some music. So can't wait to share all that with everybody. So, man, as usual, a ton of news. I want to lead with every week or every other week. It seems like there's some big headline about that, possible life on other planets. There was this information about the atmosphere on Venus. I think now it's since been debunked. But there's always this kind of like steady drip, drip, drip that the exopolitics disclosure crowd tend to interpret as being evidence of slow disclosure, building towards the big moment when they'll finally tell us the truth that we've wanted to know all this time, that there are in fact other aliens and they've been visiting us. And oh, by the way, we've got trees with them now. What was some of that news? Because you connected it interestingly to something I was not even aware of, Mark.
In terms of alien life, I'm not sure which story, Miles. But
well, I'm thinking in terms of off-planet exploration is more.
Oh, sure. So the big news was here now. A couple of weeks ago, there was something called the Artemis treaties. Well, actually, the Artemis Accords, which was led by the United States and France and a couple other countries, but ended up being 8 countries that signed these accords. And basically, they set the ground rules for mining off-world bodies such as the moon, Mars, asteroids, et cetera. And of course, as you know, we just had NASA touchdown on the asteroid. We briefly talked about that on one of the shows. So if people didn't think that humans were spacefaring entities, we're well past that. In fact, we're at the point now where we're setting the ground rules moving forward for how to interact with these different materials and who owns what. And now what's interesting about the Accords is who didn't sign them. Of course, Russia and China didn't sign them. So, how we like conflict here on Earth, unfortunately, I think we're setting the stage for some of that off-world as well.
Right. And this kind of, I was thinking, tied into this this announcement about more water being discovered on the moon. And like you're saying, it seems, yes, NASA to make major announcement about the moon. And suddenly we're just going to start rolling out the off-world mining operations and whatnot.
Yeah, they'd been teasing this big announcement long ago. And it's just this really neat coincidence that after we signed the Artemis Accords, they announced that physical water is a molecule is just widespread across the surface. What's more importantly is the sunlit surface of the moon, where they didn't think it could survive due to lack of atmosphere, et cetera. So anyway, this is a plan, the way they're even rolling out the news on some of this stuff. So stay tuned there. But we're about to embark on a brave new world out there.
Well, the other article I really wanted to focus on a little bit is this GQ of all places. It amazes me in this weird post 9/11 reality tunnel that we've fallen down. That places like GQ and Vanity Fair often have some of the better investigative news reporting. Yeah. This is a really awesome long article, again by a fellow lady, Julia Ioffe. IOFFE. I'm not sure. The mystery of the Immaculate Concussion. And, I remember hearing about this back in 2018 when we started hearing reports about American diplomats, their family members, and slowly we started hearing about actual American intelligence agency spies seemingly being attacked by what people have described variously as an acoustic weapon or possibly some kind of microwave weapon. And when I experienced my own Mystery Hum episode a few years ago, when I thankfully it stopped. It only lasted for about 26 days or about a month. But as I was doing research for it, that's when I was hearing about these attacks. And of course, I was long aware of the potential deleterious weaponization type approach and effects of various types of acoustic weapons, just acoustic phenomena. It's long been known in the paranormal research field that things like infrasound and ultrasound and ELF, thus the naming of my zine back in the 90s, ELF Infested Spaces, after Terence McKenna's Elf Infested Spaces, but the ELF because there was all these tales of mind control that were literally just enmeshed in all the paranormal, UFO, and conspiracy lore of the 80s and 90s. And moving forward, the technology's only advanced. And nowadays they have actually commercially viable things like hollow sound. I forget exactly what they call it, but it's like a micro or a shotgun style directed audio for use in like advertising and in museums and so forth. But these stories of attacks by or against the foreign diplomats and their families at these embassies around the world, particularly, I think, over a dozen, maybe even 24 in Havana, Cuba. But now they're finding that there are reports all around the world at American embassies, sometimes even outside the embassies. And in this article, it talks about a particular now former CIA operative who was in charge of our efforts against the Russians across Europe, and he was attacked back a few years ago in this way, and apparently, he, along with a lot of the other victims, the alleged victims, are having trouble getting their symptoms recognized, getting the treatment that might help them, and let alone even a diagnosis. But it's a fascinating article. There's just so many different ins and outs to this that I would implore people to research and to look deeper. Starting with this article, it's a great resource, a great way to start in on this. But I must say, there's a lot of aspects to this, because obviously the relationship between the United States and Russia has been really politicized post the election of our current president. And for better or worse, it appears to be a very difficult topic to bring up with the president, and without him apparently pitching a fit. And of course, there's a lot of speculation and theorizing as to what the nature of that problem is there. But it seems really interesting to me that on the one hand, there definitely does seem to be this idea that the drum beats have been long beating for a renewed Cold War, if not an actual hot war against Russia. And there definitely seems to be evidence here that's pointing towards the probability that these attacks are being done by them. One of the more interesting aspects revealed in this article that I had been unaware of is that they claim to have basically gotten public source data on several of these FSB Russian agents, and were able to track them to locations very close, sometimes actually in the same hotel as the people in the hotels where they experienced these episodes. But what's even more disturbing is that besides the ramping up of these attacks, these attacks becoming more frequent around the country, is that they appear to have now happened on American soil, even against American government officials here in the United States. Now, there's a lot that one could go into in this that is very technical, and I'm going to, for the sake of brevity, just again implore people to go check this out over at GQ.com.
Miles, did they speculate on the apparatus that might be generating these direct energy technologies or beams or whatnot?
Not specifically, though. They do reference something I was long aware of. I believe it's called the Frey, F-R-E-Y is the name of the scientist who back, I believe, in the 60s or 70s, he was the one, I think, that discovered that you could modulate microwave frequencies directed at the human brain and induce the experience of sound, even in a deaf person. So you could literally, hypothetically, use this microwave technology to put voices in one's head. Obviously, an excellent potential psychological warfare tool, though again using microwaves, not least of which being highly dangerous under even controlled circumstances. And that's the thing is the speculation is that it is some type of microwave weapon. They, talk about it possibly being an acoustic weapon, but most of the speculation centers on microwave energy being beamed from, a hotel room below up into the bedroom of the victims, or even from a van outside through the walls. And it even goes so far as to speculate that it could be shot from miles away. It then, of course, makes the leap to the LRAD and these active denial systems that have been thought about rolling out for the riots here. But you were about to say
if you think about how pervasive or what the various scales at which this technology exists, a lot of people don't realize that our Navy vessels are equipped with, direct energy beams now in the stead of lasers. Lasers didn't really work out. They have them, But most of our naval ships are transferring over to direct energy beamed weapons, et cetera. And then you look at the rollout of 5G, and I know it's very in vogue right now to use 5G in conspiracy theories and all like that. But it just shows how it's in the everyday, and it can be at this very large scales, and it can be at these very small scales. So there's no question that the apparatus or the delivery method or modes is probably across all of those scales, which is quite scary, frankly. Well, concerning.
Yes. And again, this is just the stuff that we know about through public science, publicly available resources. And, there's obviously a likelihood of much more that we don't know about. Before I get to the other article I wanted to talk about, there's just some other headlines. Again, you can go over to anomalyarchives.org and click through to our Flipboard page where we collect all these weekly news articles and whatnot. And boy, they're going to pull a matrix on us, man. I know there's plenty. I have plenty of friends who firmly believe that chemtrails are real. Some of those people believe that they are part of an already ongoing geoengineering project, described here in this article from I don't even know how to pronounce that website, DNYUZ.com. As climate disasters pile up, a radical proposal gains traction. And it's this idea of seeding the atmosphere with particles to reflect solar radiation back out so that we can try to start radically cooling our planet as a way to counter climate change. And, again, we've got plenty of science fiction and horror movies.
This is very dangerous.
It's very
dangerous.
It's one thing to suggest it on a planet. Yeah, I mean, let's go let's go mess over other planets before we mess up ours, right? As bad as that might be. But, obviously this has been a long-term idea for various aspects of terraforming, or rather other planet forming, to make like Austin, like Earth. But man, just got to be dangerous there.
Yeah, it's problematic in the sense that the Earth system is so complex. We really don't understand how, if you push in one part of it, the way it affects or pops up in other parts of that system. The system is just too complex to be interjecting this kind of chaos, frankly. I mean, at some point, we have to be restrictive and more restrained and responsible with the way that we deal with technology. Particularly at a regulatory level. I mean, where are the level heads on all this? We can't be messing with the weather. This is not good. So anyway, you guys stay tuned to this sort of stuff. You can vote, you can call people, your regulators, et cetera, and voice your concerns, but we should not be tampering with the weather, in my humble opinion.
I agree. Back in the day, my old co-host Mack White and I had on Jerry Smith, who'd written at least one, possibly two books on weather modification technologies. And it still goes on today. Texas is very active in cloud seeding for farmers and whatnot. So, mucking about with the weather is not something new, but the technology to do it keeps improving or getting more elaborate.
It's the scale too, Miles. You can't just create a cloud over a city so that there's no global warming in that one city. The scale at which they're suggesting here is what's so concerning. If you really want to make some sort of impact to the reduction or to control climate change, that's where you're really playing with fire, because you just don't know what's going to happen at that sort of scale. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind for everybody if you are concerned about that. Think of the level at which they're trying, or the audacity that they're trying to do this at a global scale. That's incredibly intimidating.
And it does frighten me to think that maybe that's already going on. I think, and that's the thing, is I remember back 20 years ago, I think was when they started changing, I believe, the chemical makeup of the jet fuel, and it was causing, I believe, contrails, the regular old contrails, to persist longer. And mainstream aviation magazines and mainstream climate magazines were talking about how the more persistent contrails over cities, over high traffic aircraft zones, was changing the weather. So this isn't just like wild-eyed speculation, and even though this kind of level of it might be considered that. So,
well, they're finding now with the California fires, you get all this, whatever these metals are that are coming down in the contrails, they eventually fall back to Earth. And when these fires kick up these thermal winds and whatnot, they believe, and there's a lot of scientists that are looking at this now, how it's like getting kicked back up out of the dust, so to speak, with these fires. So you're getting double exposure in many cases. And, that's the case with any pollution for that matter. It's these dynamic events, fires, floods, et cetera, where you're redistributing some of these contaminants. Once they were deposited or settled, now you're stirring them up and you're exposing ecologies and societies to them a second, third, fourth time with these new modalities. That's concerning.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So again, over at our Flipboard, again, so much good stuff. This one that Victor Criterion sent me, no implants needed for precise control deep into the brain. This is, I've been hearing about this where they can actually affect neurons and whatnot through laser light and so forth. Of course, big news with the death of infamous, legendary skeptic and debunker, the not so amazing, not very amusing Randy. Don't wish ill on the guy, even as much as he pissed off many of my close friends over the years. But interesting article about the BBC fessing up to a fake staged haunting investigation that they did. Lots and lots of great stuff over at our Flipboard, including, where is that one? There's the one I wanted to talk about, but yeah, no, wait, I want the Rockwall. I saw that you had mentioned this to me in an email. America unearthed ancient ruins buried beneath a Texas town, and I think I actually drove by this town just recently on a road trip. Rockwall, Texas, infamous because of this structure that was believed to possibly be connected to or part of an old, much older than civil evidence for civilization than had previously been thought to exist. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, you are. And the urban legends surrounding this, this town and whatnot, I hate to say it for their tourism industry, but it's been concretely debunked. This is a naturally occurring formation. Recently, a gentleman on the history, you can see it there. They were the one that put it out, but he's what's known as a forensic geologist. So they use a lot of tools to do investigative work, and that's kind of like his lane. So what he did is they took core samples out of this wall. And by the way, go watch the video. They actually dig down and you can see the wall. It's not really at the surface. They had to use like a backhoe and dig down to find these supposed, stones or kind of quasi masonry work. Anyway, they took cores out of the bricks and they looked at the magnetism of them, which you infer the orientation of metal particles in these rocks. And it turns out the orientation was the same across all the samples. So what that means is it was all laid down at the same time. Whereas if they were bricks, somebody flips a brick the wrong direction or you cut it a different shape, this orientation of the metals would be all pointed in random directions. And it turns out they were all oriented in the same direction, meaning they were natural due to the magnetic field of the Earth. When the formation was deposited, that the magnetic field of the Earth orientated them at the time that they were deposited, essentially. So yeah, that's 100%. Sorry, Rockwall, debunked.
Still want to go
visit though. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Not to interfere with their tourism. Definitely still want to go check it out and see it for myself. I love that kind of stuff. I think that's really,
me too.
Really cool. The other article I really wanted to talk about is there's this video put out by, of all people, the Financial Times. It's a short 15, 25 minute video about this idea that is QAnon a game gone wrong? And I recalled that back in September, I believe a writer for Medium.com did an article about this idea that it's an ARG, but as he describes in the article in much detail, that it's an ARG in reverse. But for those who are familiar with me and my past conspiracy mongering, I've long been fascinated by ARGs. It goes back to 2001 when there was a game coming out called Majestic. And this was one of the earliest ARGs that I was aware of. ARG meaning alternate reality game, sometimes also meaning augmented reality game. And it's very connected to what's called LARPing, live action role playing, and other kinds of chaotic fiction or real world gaming, whereby you interact with people that you think are real. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Online and through various technological devices. The Majestic ARG came out before September 11th, and its demise is largely credited as being because of the paranoia that we all fell into post 9/11. That people didn't want to play a game that played you, that made you paranoid. By literally calling you and saying horrific things over the phone or in text messages or faxing you stuff. But it's a fascinating idea, and it's been utilized in a lot of very interesting and creative ways as educational platforms. There was a swine flu ARG that was designed as being kind of a live, real-world exercise type of training session. And so there's been a lot of effort expended looking into this, and you can obviously see how this could have beneficial uses for espionage. If you can get somebody to physically go somewhere and, go to what used to be called a dead drop or a place where you leave clues or find clues. I mean, it's basically like a scavenger hunt that can be real world or online. Well, several people are now claiming that that's exactly what QAnon is. And if it wasn't started that way, it would definitely seem true that it has become that sort of thing by interlopers who are either just taking advantage of the situation for their own ends or maybe started it all themselves. I really am not sure myself yet, not completely convinced by it. I've looked at ideas that it's connected to alternative art movements. And in fact, this Financial Times video specifically mentions the work of Discordians, those people like Robert Anton Wilson and Kerry Thornley, who seeded the idea that the Illuminati run the world through the letters column of Playboy magazine back in the day. And as with any game, there's always going to be kernels of truth wound around whatever it is you're using to do the storytelling. And anyway, I would encourage folks to check into that. We've touched on QAnon a number of times recently, and obviously it's a very politically charged arena, but I do think exploring it and other movements from this perspective can be very useful because, in a lot of ways, espionage is a game. And
Absolutely. I think, Miles, what comes to mind is, everybody knows about the notion of a Manchurian candidate, but if you can physically get a person for whatever reason, again, like you're saying, there's these false narratives, but if you physically take a device like your smartphone into an environment where your intention, at least to you, isn't to go collect data, just by simply having a smartphone on you, and then you physically, for whatever reason, visit that location, you can extract all that data without the person even realizing that that's why they were sent there in the first place. That's what makes it so concerning, is the convergence of digital information and exactly what you're saying, where, you have these false narratives. It is what it is. It's our future.
Yeah, we're living it.
Yeah, we are.
Well, again, thank you, folks, for tuning in. Stay tuned. Right here on this channel, it'll be a different URL, or you should still be able to use the youtube.com/user/AnomalyArchives/live URL to get to the live stream that'll be coming up in about 15 minutes, starting at 7:45. I Need to Excess and Victor Criterion will be joining me again for round 2 of the Willie Seabrook's Wow, the Twisted Tale of Willie Seabrook and His Flesh-Eating Zombies. And as we also mentioned earlier, coming up very soon, we'll have more details about the upcoming Anomaly Archives Streamathon 2020 fundraiser. It's going to be a great time, and really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Mark, for joining me.
Thank you, Miles. Appreciate it. And by the way, with the mask, you never know who's a zombie these days. So be on your toes.
Yes, it's going to be a very strange Halloween.
All right. Thanks again.
Stay safe, everybody. Good night.
Good night.